Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts on this panel virtually. Apologies for aborting my trip to Hiroshima because of work-related and personal reasons. Kokoroyori owabi moshi agimasu. Minasama ohayo gozaimasu. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for this opportunity to be part of this panel with Dr. Subunang of Segi University, Dr. Shoshu Kim of the Ministry of Education of Malaysia, and Dr. Takoyashi Maki of Hiroshima University. Konoshotai wa ni kansha shimasu. Honto ni arigatai koto desu. Kokoro kara arigatou gozaimasu. My sharing for this panel on lessons learned from basic education and Tibet is focused on how will Tibet cope, transform, and innovate in the post-pandemic era for sustainable development. Tibet wa dono you ni taishishi henkakushi kakushinsuru no desho ka? For my talking points, watashi no hanashi no pointo, I would like to provide an overview of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in the education sector, particularly Tibet. Definitely, Tibet has been disrupted during the pandemic big time. Hence, the urgency of Tibet reforms because of the school closures and lockdowns have triggered changes in the delivery of classroom and workshop education and training. The COVID 19 pandemic disrupted the school and training systems globally, and the impact was overwhelming. The pandemic has also interrupted most global initiatives, particularly those intended for human capital and economic development. In particular, the Tibet suffered significantly from the school closures and company lockdown, as training and assessing practical skills are Tibet's main features. While most education systems continued through online modalities, this was challenging for Tibet because most schools' training and development cannot be done effectively through remote modalities. Tibet intrinsically requires hands-on and face-to-face training. Hence, I will share some experiences of the selected countries and how the pandemic has hindered skills development and assessment skills in the Tibet sector during the COVID-19 pandemic and its implications to curriculum development for sustainable development. From these experiences, I hope to provide insights into how Tibet will cope and transform and innovate in the post pandemic era. I will also discuss how Tibet will remain steadfast for further natural and artificial disturbances. So, what is the immediate effect of COVID-19 pandemic on Tibet provision? First, let me share with you what ILO and UNESCO and the World Bank have found from their online survey in May in 2020 and how training was provided during the COVID-19 pandemic. ILO UNESCO survey was conducted in April and May 2020. They collected data from 1,349 respondents in 126 countries, mostly representing Tibet providers. Please note that Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, Japan, and Korea participated in this survey. The vast majority, or 90%, of the respondents reported complete closure of Tibet centers in their countries, and virtually 98% of the respondents reported disruption of work-based learning. This meant that assessment activities were also halted, with over 75% of the respondents' postponement of certification exams. Obviously, this caused an alarm because it can lead to discouragement and discontinuation or dropout of many students, which will have a long-term social and economic consequences. Without a strategic remediation, this can create a COVID 19 generation of workers with low earnings and low quality jobs over their lifetime. However, the report also indicated that partial closure in the orange and gray color by respondents in some regions, mainly in Asia and the Pacific, the Americas, Europe, and Central Asia. The Philippines is one of the countries that reported partial closure either in specific region or in specific activities. Because of the complete or partial closures, trainers have to go online. But doing this, they face many obstacles when providing training. The report revealed that trainers lack the necessary skills for remote training. Okay, they need more time to prepare videos and online training, and they have low internet access. Hence, the respondents felt that may lead to increased dropout as some students were demotivated. Also, respondents pointed out that low internet access and lack of equipment and gadgets among poor students are the key challenges for the remote learning. Of course, because of the lockdown, businesses have also closed, preventing students from carrying out internships, practicum, on-the-job training, and practical training, which are critical element of Tibet. Countries like Cambodia reported the difficulties in the training delivery as some subjects need hands-on practice with teachers' guidance such as electricity, automotive, and civil engineering. Aside from the lack of distance learning infrastructure like internet connectivity, platforms, and resources, the lack of preparedness of teachers and students for online and distance training was also considered a negative effect of the pandemic. Respondents from Indonesia, Malaysia, including the Philippines, reported that it was hard to monitor learning outcomes and carry out suitable assessment of students. Most ASEAN countries like Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, however, indicated that carrying out certification exams and assessment were carried out of even during the pandemic. To appreciate and understand the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on Tibet provision, ILO UNESCO World Bank Survey also asked how often online or distance learning was used for courses and trainings before the outbreak of the COVID. The first figure of this slide, which I also took it from the same survey of UNESCO ILO World Bank in 2020, indicated that before the outbreak, distance learning was not widely used. Before the pandemic, nearly around 30% of the respondents did not use online distance learning for courses or training at all. And third use it only occasionally. Around 17% use it regularly and a mere 11% use it very often. Certainly, these findings indicate a relative low of online distance learning before the COVID-19 pandemic for Tibet. Likewise, suggests that the shoot out of ODL or online distance learning during the crisis in the Tibet sector, much like in general schooling and universities. In the second figure, it shows how training was provided during the COVID-19 pandemic. 64% reported that they shifted completely remote training, and 12% reported that training was provided partially remote and partially face to face, including countries like the Philippines, Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, as well as Japan and South Korea. In the Philippines, along with 30 countries like Cambodia, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, reported that training was provided partially remote and partially face to face. In spite of the challenges of Tibet provision and training delivery, there were positive and effective effects the pandemic brought to Tibet. COVID-19 outbreak sparked incredible endeavors to promote continuity and hasten a fast-track innovative approaches as well as policies. After halting face-to-face classroom and work-based training, many Tibet providers clambered to transition to remote learning modalities, identifying solution and partners, collaborators to facilitate this more and likewise attempted to establish stronger and practical support to teachers and students. In other words, Tibet institutions and providers became more resilient, responsive, creative, and entrepreneurial. Institutional crisis preparedness strategies were also operationalized and exploited every potential opportunity offered by technology and industry partnership. Hence, Tibet introduced new approaches in assessment or certification, quality assurance, teaching methods mostly tapping the potential of technologies with synergies with telecommunication operators and technology providers. Even with disrupted Tibet provision, Tibet institutions globally upskilled their staff to align with the new developments. They resorted to focusing their remote training on theoretical course which can be delivered online that would prepare them to resume practical skills and training in the future, the post-pandemic era. The COVID-19 also created an opportunity to revisit the curriculum, this time more aligned with employers and the fourth industrial revolution together with the SDGs. Together with this, the development of training resources and enhancing work-based training opportunities. Existing gaps before the pandemic was given more attention, resorting to resulting in a more relevant and responsive curricular development. Along with this, Tibet was able to review pre-pandemic teaching principles and approaches and build on them to provide better Tibet curricular programs after the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic also created new opportunities. In fact, World Bank, ILO, and UNESCO considered 2020 was a year of intensive creativity for Tibet. Because of COVID-19, new curricula and commercial opportunities were generated, responding to the needs of industry post-pandemic. Most countries have reported that they have created digital curriculum database and developed digital skills for learners and teaching staff. In fact, to better establish synergy with industry and employers, a lot of Tibet providers shifted to more flexible, short course to better respond to the employees' needs. In Brazil, for example, the National Service for Industrial Training, or SENAI, Serviço Nacional de Aprendizaje Industrial, a network of non-profit secondary level professional schools established by the Brazilian Confederation of Industry, significantly expanded its virtual offer and capacity in 2020. It also created a platform to support the Senai pedagogic staff in developing and delivering content remotely and the digital innovation hub which firms can articulate real-world challenges. Okay, Holt Fisher, 2021. COVID-19 also opened empowered Tibet to develop policies to review them at institutional level. The pandemic, by accident, exposed the weakness in Tibet institutions and system. Tibet set out initiatives to improve skills development, mechanisms that are tailored to both the students' individuals' needs and to the changing needs skills on the labor market with digital skills, socio-emotional skills, higher order thinking skills, and adaptability being valued than ever. This opened a window to encourage the entrepreneurship among students and opportunity as stakeholders realize the potential and need for instructional reforms of Tibet for better skills development, better jobs, and of course, increasing awareness and more positive perception of Tibet. The hallmark of Tibet is focus on practical skills and work readiness for future work, which makes remote learning introduced during the pandemic particularly challenging. We all know that most practical skills are generally acquired through the hands on learning by doing, which takes place in school based workshops and laboratories and through hands on experience at the workplace. Hence, even if there is a robustness of access and digital connectivity for remote learning, the report learning is still considerably weak substitute for practical exercise, especially when they require the use and manipulation of equipment or materials which are normally found in schools or workplace and not usually found at home. Generally speaking, the current and potential response to transform, advance, and innovate Tibet can be set up according to their time relevance. The World Bank and UNESCO, UNIVOC, and ILO propose three stages or perspective toward post-pandemic era, namely the immediate or the coping stage, the medium term or managing continuity stage, and the long term improving and accelerating stage. So, what is the immediate response? We need to cope by reducing learning and training that has been lost due to COVID-19 pandemic. Our actions or policy initiatives must be directed to implement curriculum and evaluation system, most systems remotely where possible. Similarly, to continue work-based learning on site and on online where possible. Redesign, develop, and introduce Tibet curriculum and evaluation systems that engage Tibet trainers and students in the provision of skills for emergency response. Okay, um, emergency response. Uh, and students, emergency response like health workers, care services, essential service workers. The COVID 19 experience allowed us to respond quickly to skills needs such as designing and production of materials such as surgical masks and transportation of medicines, sanitizers, and disinfectants. Lastly, we need to bring back the economy into action. Where possible, take advantage of the opportunity to skill up and upskill idle youth and workers, either furloughed or unemployed, and train more Tibet workers. In the medium term, we must promote learning recovery as schools and businesses gradually open. When Tibet providers open their gates to students and trainers, the school based curriculums must embed hygiene skill programs, and employers providing work based training and learning must adapt enhance work safety conditions. The curriculum must be designed to accommodate flexible and varying needs of students that schools and work placements can be introduced when they open. Evaluation and assessment and certification must recognize prior learning, okay, or RPL, or the recognition of prior learning, particularly those skills learned during school closures and lockdown. Mental health emerged as one of the key issues during the pandemic. Hence, Tibet must respond to this by having a curriculum that provides psychosocial support for students and teachers for them to manage the mental health impact of the pandemic, impacts of the pandemic. Part of the recovery effort is to have a Tibet curriculum and assessment and evaluation system that are tailored to support vulnerable students, such as the poor, women, rural students, technology talents, and deprived communities. Lastly, to prepare rapid assessment and response to emerging skills needs brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearing to zero case of COVID-19 is to have envisioned long-term directions and strategies to transform, advance, and innovate Tibet curriculum and evaluation. The goal is to transform by building on the innovative programs and policy respondents or responses and lessons learned from the first two case phases and build back better Tibet programs. This time, the curriculum must be designed to expand the current programs, addressing emerging skills needs in collaboration with employers. We must break the wall between Tibet providers and employers. Tibet providers must invest in providing flexible, modular, part-time evening learning and facilitating modular training and micro-credentialing in Tibet and lifelong learning. Micro-credentials are mini qualifications that demonstrate knowledge and or experience in a given subject area or capacity. It is also known as the nano degree, okay, or known as nano degrees. Micro credentials tend to be narrower in range than traditional qualifications like diplomas and degrees. It is also imperative to accelerate recovery and transformation from COVID by working in partnership with employers to provide rapid and modular skills training of unemployed youth or individuals who are not in school, employment, and training or need. Okay, definitely transformation, advancement, and innovation in Tibet require continuing efforts to build remote learning, infrastructure, and skills, and last but not the least, to structurally embed successful innovation introduced in the coping and managing continuity stages in the overall skills development system. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Tibet was quite successful in introducing and advancing digital transformation. And this can be done by developing new and enhancing learning management systems or virtual learning environments, moving from flexible and blended curriculum delivery and assessment modality, orienting key stakeholders on the benefits of online delivery, continuing to upskill staff on digital skills and other professional development opportunities, and improving digital skills of students, independent working ability and employability, and maintaining better staff student engagement and collaboration. Other approaches may be considered, but this would help us recover and transform Tibet post pandemic. For policy consideration, Tibet can transform and innovate by aligning Tibet curriculum and programs with the fourth industrial revolution, deciding to implement either a centralized or decentralized Tibet curriculum, maximizing the potential of national digital training program for Tibet staff, and performing internal review and audit of curriculum assessment. Also, prioritizing of the needs of rural Tibet beneficiaries and using good pandemic era best practices to develop better curriculum and assessment for sustainable development. And lastly, developing engagement strategies with industries and ideas. I hope this will be picked up by our Tibet agencies and authorities from different countries and put in their agenda for policy development, which of course I would be happy to support. Finally, I will end my presentation with these key takeaways. While facing disruption, Tibet can play a critical role in the different stages of COVID-19 crisis. Tibet can be well placed to introduce and implement implement important skills required and needed for post-COVID-19 pandemic aligned with fourth industrial revolution and the sustainable development goals. Tibet's focus on practical skills generate certain challenges for online distance learning during and post-COVID, and Tibet can contribute to the economic rebound and build back better programs and skills development and systems for sustainable development. With this, I will end my presentation. Korera no yoten omote watashi no hanasi owarimasu. Arigato gozaimasu. You can contact me in my social media accounts, and I would be happy to continue our conversation on how will Tibet cope, transform, and innovate in the post-pandemic era. Thank you very much.